G'day everyone and welcome back to the LPL. We've got some exciting games on the docket for you today, as we're all looking forward to fill out the arena in Hangzhou. Looks like we're going to have some very fun matches for LGD in our first game, Vici Gaming just afterwards in our second one. And I'm sure the audience is going to be packed and ready for that match because it's going to be quite a bit of fun, quite a banger of a match as we get into that one. Of course, you can see the fans already cheering on some Condi signs as, of course, our players make their way backstage. Yuki fans also doing their best to celebrate as much as they can, but it's LGD in front of the home crowd trying to bring themselves a bit closer to playoffs, but of course they've still got a ways to go before they can actually start to chase and reclaim that former glory. Of course, it's still going to be a few days away before we actually get a chance to see how LGD will be able to compete, because their opponents are fighting for the exact same thing. Vici Gaming just afterwards will be taking them on in their first match at 1-5. The new squad doing everything they can to take some wins. But welcome everyone, my name is Zach Rusty Pie. Joining me is Jacob Spawn Tabiri. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's so great to see you, man. Welcome back on the desk.
I don't know what kind of handshake this is, but I like it. I like what's going on here.
You're definitely not Rusty, by the way.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm Dom. I'm finally back. It's only been a couple of months, but hey, it's like no time at all has passed because some things never change. LGD and Vici still hanging out down at the bottom of the standings, and it's a bit of a tragedy to see that some things don't change, but hey, it's also a little bit comforting.
It definitely is the case. You know, LGD, these two teams, they are the story about rebuilding from what they started off with. Both of them getting Korean world champions, and now 3 years later, it's time to inspect the different strategies on how they are rebuilding the rosters in the franchising era.
Yeah, of course, they've still got a long way to go before we actually get to see any results from that. Before we get too much into this first matchup, though, of LGD versus Vici, let's take a look at what happened yesterday. RNG played against Team WE and got a whopping 2-0.
Fantastic match. If you guys want to see RNG team fighting in action, this is the one to catch. Multiple bounce houses with Ming on Alistar taking the MVP.
Yes, and of course, in our second matchup yesterday, we saw Snake versus TOP, in which TOP also had a similar 2-0 victory.
You just can't keep Knight down. 5 bans thrown his way. His Akali still makes his way to the MVP and takes a swift series score against them.
Yeah, always fun to watch Knight in action. We got a chance to see a little bit of his rise in the countdown on that awesome highlight reel. But taking a look at the standings as of yesterday's games, RNG now find themselves at 4-2. Top Sports at 6-2, still just a little bit higher. But we've got to turn our attention down to the bottom of the bracket. 14th and 16th will be on our first game for today, with Vici at 1-5 and LGD at 1-7.
Ooh, both of these teams definitely trying to improve their standings. Further on the night, we have Rogue Warriors versus BLG. A very tough stretch for BLG lies ahead of them, where they have to face EDG, IG, RNG in the same 4 series, so this is a must-win for them.
Yeah, this is going to be, quote-unquote, their last easy win. And finally, our last game for today, Edward Gaming versus JD Gaming. Looks to be our highlight of the day.
Yeah, and Clear Love is still out there doing massive things, but we have to bring it back. First, of course, LGD versus Vici Gaming.
And we've got some news about what's going on with LGD right now. I'm sure some of you may have seen the announcement for LGD's roster that they're looking to bring in today. We're still a little bit unclear until we get to see who's actually going to be on stage for this first matchup, but they're not going to be running Yuki and Condi. In fact, we've heard that they're bringing in Amy and Ian in the mid and jungle.
Yeah, it's actually a very rare middle of failure on the roster's part. They said this is not working, even though we brought down Invictus Gaming. Then they then dropped 6 straight games, which they're like sitting at the bottom, and they're willing to make some changes. So I think it's a good direction. The first thing of correcting anything is admitting that there is something amiss. But yeah, I do have to say that this is a bit puzzling in what they want to do with the roster overall, because they are sitting out their young star in Yuki, and the roster they currently are running is actually the oldest roster in the entirety of the LPL. There's a bit of doubts on how much future this roster currently has.
And of course, with the age of this roster, there's also certain connotations that we have to be aware of. Ian, for example, very long known for having being a bit of a bad luck Brian. We might as well call him an ill-fated Ian coming into this. But knowing what he's up against in Jay on the opposite side, we've got to start looking to see how he sort of stacks stacks up against who he's replacing. Yuki, he's been pretty hit or miss. He's had some pretty star performances, but he has had a few wide swings the other direction.
Yep. Yuki has been one of the better looking assassin players. He's always been there on the solo kill charts, actually still hold on to #1 in the LPL. But unfortunately, he also has been playing without a lot of patience. I think you can see the highlights he can do right now, but you have to remember at the back of your head, LGD are the only team that has over 300 deaths this far into the season, and a large part of it is because of Yuki. Still has the most deaths of any single player, so they've been unable to minimize their mistakes, and I think that's the reason they're having the young ones sit the bench.
And following up on that highlight reel that we just saw, they started off 3-0 on the Akali, very decisively winning the early game off of those rotations, but ended up dropping and losing that match against Team WE, despite winning the early game. So we're still looking at the same issues for LGD that seem to have plagued them for years at this point. They just cannot convert in the mid game unless it's effectively handed to them.
Yeah, lots of mistakes still happening, not a lot of momentum going forward. So I think with LGD switching the roster up, what they're really saying is, you know what, we need to make a push right now, stabilize the roster, stabilize the confidence in the organization, and get some results going. Move us out of this 16th place, because this roster, for me, it's not something that you look down the season or you look down 2 years is going to be the roster they run.
And of course, you compare that to your opponents on the other side, Vici Gaming. They are a fresh, young squad full of new players. It seems as though Vici is taking the more long-term approach. They're looking to keep these same players for, as you said, the next 2-3 years.
Exactly. Vici has been running with basically the exact same core group of people this entire split. It's the first time they're running with a fully Chinese roster without a Korean import as a focal point. We used to remember Vici as the team that just bought a ton of championship players. They've had 5 world champion players on their roster. But this time, with the franchising in 2018, they're going at it in a different approach. It's about the long term. They don't have to worry about relegation. They're willing to invest.
If ever there was a team to learn that mistake from, it would be against LGD, buying Imp after his 2014 victory. But now let's take a look at the rosters for Vici Gaming. We've got Chalitzi, Ikes, Jay, Puff, and Southwind.
Star Players is their bot lane, still holding on to the most damage share for any single player in Puff's Ezreal.
We're looking forward to seeing how he performs against Kramer down in that bottom lane. Of course, joining Kramer on the opposite side, as we now get a chance to see, PYL also makes his glorious return, along with Kandi actually staying back on the roster, but Ian shows up over Yuki, and Lives returns in the top lane.
It's going to be the debut for Ian, previously from MVP. Very unfortunate, like we were talking about, did run into what was now known as Sandbox Gaming in the promotional tournament, and then found himself unable to join the LCK. I hope he has a better time here in the LPL.
And we do have to keep our eyes, I think, on that jungle matchup. We didn't really get a chance to talk on it a little bit earlier, but now knowing that it is Kandi coming into the jungle and Ike's on the opposite side, Kandi, he's trying to do a lot for LGD, but knowing how Ikes likes to invade and try to sort of counter out on the blue side, could there be an opportunity for Kandi to try and punish this and springboard LGD through that early game?
It's definitely possible, but both of these junglers are really going very, very hard into each other's sides. So you see Ikes having the 4th highest blue buff invade rate at around around half a blue buff taken per game. So always trying to go for there, and their champion pools also really collide. Both of them really favor the Xin Zhao and Camille route, so they like going at each other earlier on, and it will most likely determine the 2v2 between Jay and Ian at the same time as well.
It almost seems as though we're looking for the 2 junglers to be our primary engage over the course of this matchup, but then again, knowing LGD, there are also some very real possibilities that we see PYL going for a good old wander that could force some team fights later on. I think we'll be keeping our eyes on Ian and Kramer to try and hold him back, and more specifically hold the team back until LGD use their experience to find the fight that they actually want.
One of my favorite quotes from an LGD player is actually from Amy, and he said, I actually don't like roaming with my support. I actually like going and doing my own thing. So it's definitely a very interesting dynamic where PYL does leave the lane a lot.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason I believe he was benched earlier on was because of, again, the deaths. That's a recurring thing for LGD. A lot of mid-game mistakes, a lot of pick-ups happening. However, RD has actually matched him in terms of the deaths, so they're actually swapping RD out, a very veteran player, but PYL has been the main shot caller, been the face for this organization for so long, they're going to give him another shot.
I think the biggest difference that we have to highlight is how the two of them synergize with Kramer and how they're able to maneuver their way through the laning phase. PYL has the experience and sort of veteran play. If he sees an opportunity, he's going to go in and make it happen. RD still perhaps growing into that a little bit, and we do have to compare that to Puff and Southwind on the other side. Puff had a spectacular Ashe game against WE just a few days ago. I'm excited to see what he can bring against Kramer today.
Yeah, they're playing very different styles. For Vici Gaming, I think they're much more of an early game, mid-game tempo style. They do like the picks that give them a lot of mobility. You're thinking about things like the Ashe that have that global arrow, the Ezreal. They're not really like a super late game scaling team comp like Kramer. For Kramer, it's always Kai'Sa. Just give me Kai'Sa, Kai'Sa. I need the most amount of damage, and I need to win out in the late game. So we have that contrasting styles, which in theory, Vici should be able to come out early ahead, and then LGD have to take it back from them.
Yeah, of course we'll have to see how Vici decide to pick themselves into this. Of course, we celebrate the Ashe game that we just saw from Vici. I believe it was against Snake in Game 1. They took it in a nice, slow, patient 32-minute win. The next game, they played almost the exact same composition and got smashed by Snake. So maybe Vici have been innovating a little bit in their time in between while traveling to Hangzhou. Maybe they've got something new to show us against LGD, because again, we've got one of the oldest teams in the LPL right now taking on one of the newest and most fresh as we get into pick ban for Game 1 between LGD and Vici.
LGD showing a lot of respect off the bat, taking away Zoe, which has a 85% win rate in the LPL currently, and is one of Jay's best champion, Cassiopeia, standard fare across the board, while Vici are targeting Kramer. Like we were talking about, when Kramer has Kai'Sa open, he always goes for it. It's the LGD win condition to drag the game out.
It should be noted, Lucian is open through this ban phase very early on, so we could see that very high Lucian priority roll through if Vici want to try to pop that early on. 10 seconds on the clock. This would be a bit more of a mobile style. We'll see if that goes towards Puff, and it is locked in.
Ooh, and this is very dangerous for LGD. Immediately they go for probably PYL's best champion, and a champion that can provide the most protection in the Tahm Kench. They know it's going to be a difficult lane, and I like this preventative pick in the Tahm Kench because one of Southwind's best champions is actually the Thresh. So you wanna kind of take that away from him without using a ban.
If anybody ever gets hooked, you just gobble them up and try to carry yourself away. And ooh, and a Kali locked in as well. So already looks like we're going to see some action with the mobility of these champions very early on.
This is interesting. Ian's traditionally his best champions has been the ones that he can poke with.
Yeah.
His most plays career-wise has been the Corki. He's very good on Zoe and stuff like Karma, things that can really chip away at you and play that siege type of style. But this time around, he might actually be going for something much more aggressive.
We'll see if that goes towards Ian or if perhaps Lies decides to take that in the top lane instead, if it gets swapped around, because as you said, Ian does prefer those long-range mages. To deal with that though, Vici, they've already got themselves Lee Sin for Ix and Galio. That is a little flexible. That could go to Jay or Southwind, though we haven't seen it go mid in a little bit. And Varus also going to be locked in. So we're seeing some pretty clear-cut initiate and engage from both sides, so no difficulty with any go-forward buttons this time.
I really like the Varus addition back into the meta. We've been seeing him crop up more and more. He still has that range advantage against the likes of Lucian, and a lot of times he can win out in terms of the laning phase. It's been the team fights where it's been a little bit more suspect with how much mobility there is around coming from the mid laners especially. So this is a very different take from LGD. It's more about keeping on pace with Vici Gaming through the early and mid game.
Now we'll see what they're trying to do with the rest of their composition. I like the LeBlanc ban in order to keep that Varus safe. Even if Tahm Kench ever separates away, you already remove the possibility of trying to burst that down, as now Kandi's jungle is going to be pared down a little bit. That Camille already banned along with that Olaf. Let's see what else he's got within the repertoire of champions to pull through, as Vladimir is also going to be very early banned last phase for LGD.
They're, like you said, they're helping Kramer with the team fight, making sure that there aren't a lot of flankers that can just deal damage to him instantly. I like the LeBlanc bank since it's also a very hard lane counter into the Akali, so probably giving Ian a bit of breathing room. I'm really interested, however, in seeing what Jay can pull out, because Jay has had one of the widest champion pools, 11 played so far, and he really hasn't settled on a single type of style. We see him do well on the Zoe, we've seen him do well on things like the Assassins, like the LeBlanc, and a lot of different picks in between. So I think that's going to be a deciding factor on what Jay can pick and what can allow him to actually take hold of the early game. Vici Gaming, much more about mid-game control, mid-game tempo. They're not really big on the big 5v5s. They're more like an EDG, I would say, in terms of their play style.
We saw this almost exact same composition out of LGD just a few days ago against Team WE with that roaming Akali, though it was Yuki who was playing it. It was even in the highlight reel just a few minutes ago. So it looks like they're sticking with the same strategy, but Ooh. That's a Sivir locked in here.
That's spicy. Now, Sivir doesn't actually do well in the lane against the Varus, but what this opens them up to do is use the Lucian mid, which is a Jay special, to try and counter the likes of the Akali. Now, we actually haven't seen this matchup ever happen in the LPL so far, so I'm very curious to see how that should go. But to me, it seems like a rather dangerous situation where if the Akali hits 6, I'm not sure the Lucian is really that well situated in the mid lane.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be scary, especially if Ian gets any help from Condi in that lane, or perhaps a roaming Tom Kench that just appears behind him. It'll be real tough if Jay ever finds himself overextended, but LGD, they're going to round things out with a Rise lock-in to finish off their composition, and just like that, we've got our 10 champions for Game 1 between Vici and LGD.
Spicy combos all around, really trying to play different styles. For Vici Gaming, this is a very hard nudge into the mid-game team fights. Their ability to have mobility with the Sivir, with the Galio, should get them into the positions they want to, and it's absolutely devastating with the Kennen pick coming out if he can get a correct flank. On LGD side, this is much more like a 1-3-1 composition for me. They have very, very good side lanes when it gets post 25 minutes, and they also have the Abyssal Voyage in the mid lane to kind of play around with that. So differing styles, one favoring the mobility and one favoring more of the raw laning strength.
And as our coaches shake hands with these two styles about to clash on stage here in Hangzhou, we get the chance to see if either of these teams will start trying to make the climb towards that final playoff spot, trying to get up towards 8th place. Because remember, LGD, they are at 1-7 right now. Vici Gaming not much better at 1-5, though they have won a few more of their matches in those other 5 series losses. So it is the age-old question, will the old dogs be able to prevail, or will the new blood of the young Vici squad be able to bring them down? What do you think, Clement?
I'm still processing all the compositions through my head.
Yeah.
I actually
what are you hung up on?
I do actually favor LGD's composition a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it has much stronger scaling abilities, and when you have teams that are evenly matched, the team that goes a little bit slower has a little bit more room to make mistakes, typically does come out at this level.
It also should be noted that Vici have a lot more flexibility in their engage. They can pop on the hunt from Sivir if they want to try to catch someone out. You've got the Lee Sin to try to pick people out. Chalitza, if he lands a stun on a big target, there's a huge amount of burst and pick if someone from LGD, God forbid, ever finds himself out of position.
I said LGD right. I favor LGD's comp a little bit more.
Okay, well, we'll see what's going to happen as we load onto the Rift for this Game 1 between LGD and Vici Gaming. Still a chance to continue. Well, we'll have to see how LGD transitions their way through the mid-game, if they can make it towards that very strong Varus, Rise, Akali late game, as Vici will hit their stride in that mid-game. But already some of these Crystal Shrines going to be prioritized by both sides, as LGD moving forward as a unit to protect Condi. Double ward
Ooh, that does not speak well of the communication, but at least we can see the LGD members smiling about it. They're laughing it off. It's the first time on the Rift with this group of players, so they're not too worried about it yet.
It should definitely be noted a positive mentality is very important, even if you are bringing in a handful of these older players. But starting off, looks like we've got some pretty standard starts. Kramer heading down bottom, trying to get some damage on that wave as Chalitza is going to get a ward on Krugs to see if he can keep an eye on Condi.
Pretty interesting, and we're seeing Kramer actually go for Hail of Blades, so this could be a situation where he's trying to pop those blight stats, get that auto attack in really, really quickly. He does have a bit of bonus magic damage on him with the W, and if he's lucky, he could just surprise people. Varus himself is already a very skill damage based champion early in the laning phase. If he can also get a lot of damage with the auto attacks, this could be a lot of surprising burst.
I mean, we can already see Kramer pretty aggressively walking up onto Puff and Southwind, who've been trying to harass the wave out, as Ian just trading for some minions under the safety of this turret. It is quite difficult for the first few levels, but once level 5, level 6 rolls around, it's going to be tables turning real quick.
I don't really think this is a great matchup for the Lucian. It's going to be very hard for him to actually avoid the damage coming out from Ian. And you can see Jay already going for the exhaust, knowing what's going to come ahead. And you have to remember, this is patch 9.2, so Akali's still very, very viable and still has that sustain attached to the Q.
Now we'll see if Jay can hold his own. He's trying to use these early levels to control the wave as much as he can, but Ian's already starting to get some wave control. And even with Ike's pathing through the lane, trying to control the scuttle. Ian, ooh, I was just talking about how good you were, Ian. Now you take a big hit and you're forced to trade flashes, though Jay will take a turret shot on the far side.
Oh, that was absolutely beautiful trading from Jay. You really don't expect the amount of damage after the press the attack procs. The extra 10% you can deal on to Ian, really making a big difference there.
And already both flashes down. We talk about those early mistakes turning the entire lane over. Well, what if the mistakes are evenly traded between the two? Ian, oh, he's thinking about it. He's got the Ignite auto attack and a quick dash back to the minion, in and out, just to keep Jay on his toes.
Forcing him out of lane, and this is a situation where Jay could lose a lot of CS. He's trying to surprise Ian and poke him out and see if he can get a cheese kill, but Ian playing too safe for that, so massive win for the Akali.
Yeah, that fleet footwork going to provide even more sustain to help keep Ian topped up as PYL and Kramer trying to control the wave over here. Now, while we've been watching the mid-lane trade interactions between Ian and Jay, both Condi and Ikes have been maneuvering pretty aggressively around the map, though it should be noted Vici have been tracking Condi. Take a look at the ward at Blue Buff that spotted him well in advance. They've got the Scuttle Crab in Blue Side River, and even a second defensive ward just in front of the Tribush down bottom. So Vici trying to keep their eyes on Condi.
Vici really has been playing through mainly their early game and trying to snowball an early positioning on objectives is how they win their games. They like to have single CC catch. They like to surprise you coming out of brushes. That's been kind of their play style. It hasn't really been about the 5v5, even with a very good AD carry with the likes of Puff in towards the bot lane. It is about early action, and so far they're not really finding any of it. LGD has been holding them down in the laning phases, and they also scale better on that end as well. So, you know, it's a really good read from LGD to find these lanes and to find the compositional edge.
It looks like we're seeing some pretty defensive wards from LGD to try to support these lanes. You've got a control ward in Pixel, another ward at the entrance to Red Buff, and another ward in Tride, just to keep an eye on it as, ooh, Piercing Arrow just going to give some mana back to Puff as it does miss Southwind.
A lot of burst damage as we were talking about, but this wave, if they get it to push in, it should push out on the next wave. And I want to see if Ikes is able to set up something and try to control that. He's already moving away. Actually was spotted in the Tri-Brush.
Yeah, we're seeing plenty of defensive wards from all sides. Looks like both teams are content to just try and preserve these laning phases for a pretty long time. As Condi, level 4, trying to race up to level 6. That's the Boots' first pickup to match the Predator because he just wants to try to race in there, scuttle in, I suppose, as quick as he can.
Top lane also going in favor of Lies. He's been really carry-centric this split. So far we've been seeing mainly on the Yorick, but Ryze is a perfect answer to the Kennen. Really stops the engage in its tracks. It's going to be so hard for Chalitza to find a good angle into LGD's composition. The more I look at this comp, the more I actually like it. It's strong early game. You can take it to Vici Gaming, and you also have so much protection to make sure that nothing slips into the back line and can take out Kramer.
I think that's where we need to turn our attention towards Ike's, who's trying to break that open. You can see him clearing out wards. Jay roaming out of the mid lane to clear out wards, looking for an opportunity. He knows there's still no flash on Ian, and though the Akali will be hard to kill, it's something that he can try to open the map up. But LGD, they've just got their whole side of the map locked down tight so that they can make it to that mid and late game.
And just waiting for the Skarner to come online. Should hit level 6 after the red buff. So I want to see where his first gank goes. You can see Vici very concerned about the Kennen towards the top side. The CC chain is the strongest in that lane, so they do need to keep it safe.
Oh, level 5. He's close. He's real close. Oh man, what is that, 90% of the bar? 95? And still, Condi, man, he's on top of the ward trying to clear this out, but Vici have been dropping these wards all over the map.
One of the greatest parts about Vici Gaming has actually been how strong their 2v2 has been in the bot side. They've actually won the lane against Uzi, won the lane against iBoy, won the lane against SMLZ. Very, very impressive stuff, and they're doing it again even in what should be considered a bit of a counter matchup with the Sivir against the Varus. Of course, they've had a lot of jungle help, and Lee Sin definitely a stronger jungler earlier on, but it's still quite impressive to see them maneuver the lane.
Oh, Ike's is looking for an opening here. Puff at level 6 can just run them right in. There goes the boomerang flash taunt. Misses Kramer with the flash reaction. Gets out of there instantaneously. Still loses PYL though as Condi shows up and it's a 1-for-1 trade. But Kramer, what was that reaction?
He knew what was coming as soon as Southwind popped out of the brush. Really fast reactions from both sides, and Condi does come in to clean up the kills. However, I still will give this to Vici Gaming. They have a little bit better on the better end on the kill distribution with the kill going to Puff.
It's not going to result in any turret pushes or any turn onto the Infernal Dragon, which could be important, but watch how quickly he just pops out.
Southwind, I have to say, it was a little bit telegraphed, but he definitely knew what was coming. PYL doesn't even have time to really pop the great health. Unfortunate right there. He should have been able to.
Always love the AD carries of the LPL, even if it's just a tiny thing like avoiding a gank. But with that pressure pushing down bottom, they will turn their attention towards the Infernal Dragon. I'm not sure if they saw Ike's on the top side of the map, which prompted them to turn on to this, but still, it's LGD. They're down 400 gold, but will find themselves up in stats once they take this dragon.
Nothing that can be answered at this point. Herald's still not up. It's probably a move done because they were expecting the blue handoff to come out of the top side. That does leave Lies pretty open to this 3v1.
Yeah, already you can see Jay, Ike's, and Chalitza over the wall. Realm Warp, he's stunned and locked down. Doesn't find his way out. Chalitza finds the kill.
Very easy stuff. Good fundamental play coming out from Vici. That was a situation where I felt Lies could have backed up just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Skarner just showed himself on the map, and they knew that with a blue handoff and Lucian disappearing from the mid lane. Should have been a pretty clear signal for him to be out of that position.
Yeah, doesn't burn his flash though, just decides to give it over. Instead it's Chalitza, I believe, who flashed in order to land the stun. And some of those minions will be missed unless Condi picks them up. Still, all in all, not too much of a detriment to Lies as PYL. Even using the emote, it's like the champion was made for him, if we're being completely honest.
It has been PYL's best champion, by far. It provides him with a lot of HP, so he doesn't fall down as easily. But I really wonder if those emotes are going to cost him later on. He's putting a target on his back for sure.
Well, honestly, you would rather have the Lee Sin, the Kennen, the Sivir attacking the Tahm Kench instead of the Varus, instead of the Akali, instead of the Ryze. So maybe some deliberate mind games.
Fair.
He's saying, attack me, I'm valuable, trust me.
For sure it's just his habits right there, but PYL doing a great job of delaying Puff's back, and it's going to cost them 2 turret platings down in the bot side.
So close. Oh man, that Sivir wave clear keeps the turret still standing, that plating still up. So a little bit of gold for LGD to take, still 3 minutes on the clock for that plating though.
So I was wrong. They only got 1, so 160 gold going over to the duo.
It's close. Unless Puff finds himself pushed out, I think we can expect that. LGD to continue the pressure down here. I mean, they've even got vision on Ike's, and Kandi's on this side of the map already.
Yeah, the bad backing position from Ike's. They know he's going to be off the map for a long time. And just look at this setup. LGD know that the Herald would not be contested. They're already heading over.
Ian trying to roam on over there. Jay is pretty effectively keeping an eye on that as he's able to place a ward. I believe he might have just spotted Kandi there, but Kandi, he's got the flash impale. He goes for it, but Jay with the dash and flash escapes.
Well, looked like a situation where Kandi might have been able to get his impale off, but settled for the flash trade. Probably even faster fingers coming out from Jay.
Looks like we actually do see a lane swap now coming out of LGD. Kramer and PYL up in the top lane. There's the slicing maelstrom from Chalitza. Not sure if they spotted LGD completing this rotation, but the wave is cleared out and the turret is protected already. Puff and Southwind making their way towards the mid lane as LGD. Very early prioritization on this Herald. Vici push in. There's the culling onto PYL. He drops the shield. Kramer, Chains of Corruption, finds Jay. Good damage. Kandi looks to go in. Hero's entrance, but Jay is dead. Knockup only finds Kandi. He's still got the impale, though, from the side. Ian flashes away, but is taunted. LGD, there's the impale. There's the dive from Ian. Ignite onto Ike's as he burns down. Southwind drops. Chalitza cannot find a way in. Using Slicing Maelstrom may have protected the turret, but it cost them the Herald.
Monster prediction coming in from Kramer. Jay falls down before he can even get an auto attack off. That's how accurate Kramer was with the Chains of Corruption, and that was basically a lost fight from that point onwards. Even though Vici Gaming actually had a very, very quick response, they didn't have the Kennen ultimate, the Slicing Maelstrom, so they really weren't willing to go into that position. They wanted to try for a little bit more poke, but Kramer caught them out.
LGD quickly and easily set themselves up, pick up the Herald, pick up a few kills, and it looks like they're also going to pick up first brick as PYL and Kramer finish off this top tier 1 turret. Finally it crumbles, and LGD 23,000 gold to the 21,000 of Vici.
Trying to break that 6-game losing streak. You can see that all the members are actually in place in time, but unfortunately Jay gets deleted before he can do any real damage, and without a Kennen ultimate, this is full-on retreat for Vici Gaming. I actually don't think Ian even really needed that flash, but just to be safe, still expends it.
The zoning flash, you got to keep them off of the Rift Herald, prevent any chance of a steal, as Ike's actually did dash away, and I think he might have used his flash in order to escape from that. It's PYL, again, still drawing that target, saying, attack me, I'm the Kench. I can take it.
And that should be the swagger of a veteran.
Exactly.
That's exactly why you want the experienced players back. Even if they're not doing anything on the map, even if they're just standing in plain vision, they can influence the players.
It should be noted, though, we just have to make sure that that swagger doesn't get to his head. It is PYL, after all, but Ike's might be looking for a dive here. Jay dashes in. There goes the dash over the wall. Pinned forward. Lies goes burning down, and Jay picks up the kill.
I like that control on the Ike's. Doesn't even go for the Q2. Leaves it for Jay.
I know. I really thought he was going to go in.
Yeah.
But gives the kill over to the carry. They're going to try and take that top turret as Ocean Dragon is traded over. Meanwhile, Sivir in the mid lane trying to clear it out as quick as she can. And it turns out that's pretty fast.
Things going over back to Vici Gaming. They're pulling the gold lead back, and this should actually help them out in the 1-3-1 scenario. Rise doesn't look like he can really face up against Lucian anytime soon.
Ian, again, baits out the very early Slicing Maelstrom. Eats a stun, but here's Kandi. He's got the Impale, pulls it right back in. Oh man, even the Abyssal Voyage, as that's Kramer joining him as well. Immediate pings onto the mid turret as Puff is trying to push that wave. LGD might have overcommitted a little bit for that kill.
Looks like they'll be fine though. The mid lane...
yeah, it was actually in between the minion waves, you're right.
The minion waves is really well done. I like how LGD actually synced up with Ian to get the Slicing Maelstrom out from the Kennen before they actually went all in onto that play. So it was a very, very good read, and it was very well synced between these different pieces. Maybe we're seeing the communication becoming a factor on why they're running with Ian at this point.
Yeah, the veteran squad of LGD, some of the oldest players here in the LPL, one of the oldest squads at least, trying to find their way towards a victory. As you said, a 6-game loss streak. They're trying to break it here against Vici. And what better way to do it in front of the home crowd as they're trying to push these waves in. Now Puff, that's the Blade of the Ruined King. Oof. Thrill of the Hunt chunks him down.
You just never expect Howl of Blades.
Yeah.
You're like, maybe the Varus is going to tap me once, but he actually has the attack speed to go all in onto the Sivir.
Really hurts when you get those Blight stacks popped, but still, that Sivir is doing a pretty admirable job of keeping the turrets alive. That's something that we didn't really discuss too much, is while LGD do have the option to scale with the Ryze, with the Varus, and look for those late-game team fights, if Vici just hug their turrets and never take any team fights, there's a Lucian in one lane, there's a Kennen in the other to clear another wave, and then a Sivir. How on earth are you going to break a Sivir who's turtling under her turrets?
Well, time is your friend at that point. The Ryze should win out on that split pushing matchup. So should the Akali. They're not really worried about anything. As long as they can keep this mid lane pushed out, I actually think they're perfectly fine. You can see Ryze already able to venture across river. The Kennen does have a much easier gank. If he has his jungler there and they can snipe out the Ryze, but as long as he has his vision and shields up, it shouldn't be that much of a problem.
Uh-oh, Ian might have gone a little bit too far as Ix decides not to step forward and engage. And I suppose there is always the follow-up to extend on your your answer to my question. If the team is turtling, well then you take Baron, then you take Dragons, then you take Rift Herald, which we've already seen from LGD. And they're still even getting some chip damage onto these turrets, so already it looks like things are working out for this LGD squad, but Ian gets some damage. Condi looking to follow up. Ix goes in, but Ian goes back. That's the Predator. Uh-oh, the Abyssal Voyage is canceled. Ian still goes in, right back, forward and out. Ix gets burned down to half. He's still going low. Condi wants it. Ian finds the kill, slicing Maelstrom as teleport is completed. Chalitza finds himself one. Condi over the wall, but he's in enemy territory, running for PYL, who's got the flash. Is he going to go for the save, though? Turns onto Southwind. Here comes Puff, and Condi gets left behind. Where's the support for the jungler here? PYL gets Puff out of position. Finally, Chains of Corruption. Kramer joins in. That's the cleanse, but the arrow! Kramer finds the assassination. Realm Warp to follow up with the chase. Abyssal Voyage and LGD are just moving too quick.
Beautiful snipe from Kramer incoming to save the day in the last one, but also very good reaction from Vici Gaming. They did get the collapse, they did get the comeback kill, and what I liked about that sequence there was how Lies played it as well, because he did not rush into the fight. He did not say, hey, there's something happening, I need to go now. He actually pushed the wave in the top side just to get an extra CS lead, to make sure that he could get some chip tower, and then he joined on the back end to clean the fight up and even take up an extra tower. So he should have gained a lot of gold in that single scenario. Puff, you didn't get the red buff. Hello? Puff? Hey, Puff?
But the minion wave, though, Clement.
Okay.
Look at those minions. Look at that gold. He must be really close to a break. There he goes. Now he's going back for it. Eyes on the prize until it's not. And then it's eyes on the prize. The absolute focus. Here's that fight again, though. And, oof, canceled out by Southwind.
Messy situation to start it off. Ian can't actually find the initial kill because of the Hex Drinker and does have to go in once more, get sniped out by Chalitza. And just look at this Ryze. He has his teleport, but he's not eager to join the fight just yet. He knows he can do maximum damage while still staying into the top side. And finally, when he does join, it's at the best possible scenario. He zones out Puff and gives an easy snipe over to Kramer to find that comeback kill.
2-0-2 on that Varus so far with the Gwynsu's and Blade of the Ruined King done. He does some shred. And still with 2 dragons already picked up by LGD, they turn their attention onto a third, now a mountain dragon. Earth, water, and fire to round out these elemental squads for LGD, and they are feeling pretty happy with how this mid-game transition is going. They still need to convert it into a win, though, and that requires getting to the enemy nexus.
The key thing about this game so far is Vici really hasn't been able to make use of its composition. They have their winning spots in terms of mobility, in terms of catch potential, but LGD, every single lane, has just been splitting the team members up, and Vici has never been able to group. They've never had the upper hand in terms of these engages, and I think that's perfectly, that's a perfect situation for LGD to drag the game out.
Just waiting for one member from Vici to be a little bit too separated, a little bit too far out of position, and then Abyssal Voyage, Teleport, Realm Warp, so many different ways to get in and pick that member off before converting into an objective. Whereas Vici, they're starting to play from the back foot. they're starting to fall a little bit further behind. As you can see, their defensive wards creeping back into their own jungle.
And the Colonel definitely senses it. He's giving it up for LGD. 2 spoons up.
Robo Colonel trying to support LGD as best he can. But still 21.5 minutes in, Baron has spawned and LGD still just controlling waves, waiting for Vici to be out of position.
I have to say this is a pretty fast Baron team at that as well. They already have an Infernal, and a Mountain Drake, plus a Blade of the Ruin King, damage-dealing top laner.
Ooh, there's the Chains of Corruption. Condi walks it forward. Oh, it's actually going back in for Southwind. And he ends up going down to Ian.
Smart play from LGD. Someone had to check.
Yeah, just playing that vision, playing around Baron, and Vici just a little bit too passive with that defensive vision, lose their support, and now it looks like they're set to lose the mid lane tier 1, though Ian, ooh, Spell Shield goes up onto Puff as Ian misses the daggers.
It doesn't really find anything, but LGD are still set up in a perfect position to just continue this play, find catches overall. If Vici wants to contest this, they need to be all 5 members willing to go into the pit at the same time and willing to take a big team fight. I think that has to be their mentality if they want to break out of this chokehold.
I mean, if we remember the Rift Herald fight at about 12 minutes when Vici looked like they were set to contest, they didn't have Jalitza's ultimate and they were ended up split across the map. That's, I think, where LGD's mobility comes into play. They can pick and choose where they want to engage much more quickly than Vici and force Vici to respond in a bad position.
Yeah, I think LGD just have a lot of tools that can deny Vici's engage. The Kennen's going to... I don't think the Kennen can actually find his way into the backline. Most likely it's going to have to be Ike's with the Galio on top of them. Hero's entrance, try to knock up Kramer briefly, create that chaos, and use that moment to create an opening that Chalitza can later join on into the team fight.
Still going to be a lot of pressure. You can see Ike's just peeking, poking, looking for an opportunity, but LGD are playing nice and safe. They're not stepping forward unless they know they can convert and get the rest of the squad in. And just controlling, again, these side waves. Condi's up top along with Ian, perhaps trying to bait Jay. Flash Impale is ready. Ian's got the flawless execution. He wants it. He wants it real bad.
Safe play by Jay.
Man, Jay. He was close to the edge and he didn't even know it.
He had the Quicksilver Sash and he still played it as safe as he possibly could. Never venturing across the river, but it looks like Vici Gaming, they're going to use this time and try to find an engage.
And they managed to find Kramer out of position. PYL not able to get the save, and that's the very quick rush out of Vici. Southwind and Puff break down the turret. And suddenly LGD, they will trade by taking the bottom tier 2, but the map is starting to open up.
That's a good trade by Vici. I like what they did, and they also held on to control towards the Baron side. Even with backing right here, they should be able to at least keep eyes on it, so they're not too worried about losing the Baron in a flash.
Uh-oh, was that the Abyssal Voyage? That was. Condi gets into the back line, but it's LGD who are split. Ian gets mobbed and burned down. Now Condi running as best as he can, along with Lies on the opposite side, but LGD running for the hills. Puff gets the boomerang pizza and finds himself one. Lies, ooh, autos the blast cone, mid-retreat. Seraph's Embrace gives him a shield, but it's not enough, and LGD fall apart faster than LGD build their lead.
I know you were trying to go for some minute. Yeah. It's okay, it's okay. LGD, what they were trying to do right there was link up with Lies. He was coming from the bot side. They thought they had a perfect collapse, but Lies actually never got into the fight itself. He was cut across by terrain. Southwind was zoning the choke away from him, and LGD funneled all of their damage into a big Galio.
Not exactly a desirable target when there's a Lucian and a Sivir who can then turn and burn down a Baron on the back of that. But LGD, a tale as old as time, a song as old as rhyme.
Let's see that fight happening again. Chalitza this time does have his ultimate, and he's just able to respond instantly. Ian just gets deleted, doing absolutely nothing in that fight. Double CC chain, and you can see Lies on the left side of your map, still having a very difficult time actually finding his way into the team fight. And what should have been a collapse gets basically a perfect response from Vici.
Yeah, it's a handful of kills in the Baron off the back of that. 9 kills to 7 and an even gold difference between the two teams. Maybe 300 gold in favor of Vici. But I think the thing that sold it for me about that fight was watching Ian die and then immediately PYL, fork and knife out, tongue hanging forward, just turns and starts running for the hills as fast as he can. So very true to the LGD style. And even with 4 elemental dragons, now it's Vici who are starting to control the map. They still need to respect their side lanes, though.
Definitely the case, but at this point, I feel like Vici have enough velocity in their mid lane to really just push it out and then turn around to punish these side lanes. You can see Ike's already searching for the potential engage. Very good play by Lies to take himself out of that situation. But just look at how fast Vici can now push the mid lane. They have most of their kills onto the Sivir. She's going to have a great time against Kramer, and with the Baron buff, there's not going to be lots of response. So LGD's 1-3-1 in the face of the Baron buff, in the face of the mobility from Vici Gaming, starts to fall apart.
Ultimately, it does end up being a bit of a trade. 2 turrets for LGD. As they take the bottom tier 2 and the top tier 2, bringing them to 5 turrets to 3. And Vici, they're still looking for it. They've got 90 seconds on this Baron buff while the waves are starting to push in. The only one that they need to worry about really is bottom, and now that Ryze is mid, Vici might have an opportunity to look for a tier 2 siege. As you can see, defensive pings from LGD both top and mid.
Now, the key thing is Chalitza and how he can find his engagement towards the back line. LGD looks like they're not even going to contest at this point. A lot of good Banshee Veils being bought. Also with the Quicksilver Sashes, so it's going to be hard for LGD to keep the entire composition back. They're going to have to hit multiple skills to deny that cannon.
Still Chalitza just hanging out, looking for an opportunity. Vici clear out the golden triangle behind Baron to maneuver back between that top and mid, as both the top and mid tier 2s look like they're going to go down. Yeah, just now broken down by Jay. 5 turrets to 5, gold advantage Vici. They're still pushing this wave in. Teleport coming in from Lies as PYL takes a couple of chunks. Kramer looking for 1, holds on to the chains though.
I like how hard Vici is pressing the issue at this point, forcing out the teleport from Lies. They know he doesn't have the push potential to really equalize this. So a lot of times, newer teams in this situation, it's like a game of chicken. And a lot of times, young rookie teams will be the one to flinch first. They'll be backing, but Vici know how fast they can get their engages off, and they're taking it, and they're really forcing the issue.
That's the Realm Warp. Fly's teleported and now has Realm Warped to get all the way in, as he's trying to clear out both top and mid, but Vici break down the inhibitor turret and convert that Baron into what is now a 2,000 gold lead over LGD. And just like that, LGD stumble and fall, backpedaling not to lose the game.
That's such a classical LGD.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's so. It feels like you're seeing LGD's entire history play out in front of you.
2016, 17, and 18, right here in one game.
Yeah, it's like you're doing so good. You have all the pieces set up. It looks great. And then there's just one play that ruins it all, and the aftershock of that play echoes around the map. And the burden of that play still hangs so heavily on LGD where they can't get out of it. They're actually being choked and strangled by Vici Gaming that frankly had no business to be in this position given the early game.
And it's not even that LGD found themselves defenseless to be choked and strangled. It's as if they reached out, picked up the hands of Vici, and placed it upon their own neck. LGD put themselves in that position thinking they had the opportunity to take a fight, but with Ian dead, with Kramer back at base, it just did not work out. And now it's Vici who control the map. Baron's up in 60 seconds, Ocean Dragon in 20, LGD. They've got their sights set on this Baron as they're once again trying to reclaim control over that golden triangle, but already Vici controlling their side waves. They push out bottom, looks like they're going to catch top and then push through mid.
It was 5-0 in terms of Herald and Dragons for LGD. That's how much map control they had. And it really does show you how important those mid-game team fights are in this current meta, because the towers fall down far easier than compared to something like the earlier, or to Season 8. So once you have that big mid-game team fight, it's past 14 minutes, the towers are made of paper.
Yeah.
You get completely snowballed in one side. And we've really been seeing that as kind of the most critical thing in these patches in most of our games. Whoever really gets that big wipe in the mid game, just has absolute dominating control afterwards.
It should be noted, though, that LGD still get the third Ocean Dragon as Vici back, and LGD simply walk forward and get it for what was effectively free. And speaking of the importance of those mid-game team fights, we've got some really big items to try and break that apart. 4 items on both AD carries. Looks like 3 items just about on both Jay and Ian as PYL. He's going to eat the culling, happy to put up the shield. On the side, it's Condi. He drops Predator, gets kicked into the side, the knock up, the taunt on the 3. Slicing Maelstrom follows it up, and LGD are falling apart. Ian running as far as he can, lies trying to book it out of there, but he goes down, chased away. Kramer pops back up with the GA, but his team is dead. His chance of turning this around is slim to none, and I'm sorry, Clement, but Slim is out of town as Vici are looking to take the inhib.
Can Kramer actually get out of this? He's trying to go for the 1v2.
There's the taunt. Oh, he actually managed to find one. Turns on to Southwind and forces out the stopwatch. Teleport is being used by the Kennen to get in there. A double kill, but Chalitza is on the way. Ward inside of the turret. Now Kramer, he's got vision. Hail of Blades popped. He walks it forward, gets the blight, lands some damage, and still Ian holding the fort back at the Nexus. Kramer, one man against the world. Can he hold his ground as Ian clears the minion waves and Vici overcommit for these kills? Ian even finds himself a kill onto Jay in the back and is continuing to chase it down with PYL as they're trying to chase down Puff, and Kramer, the man on a mission, escapes with his life. He's going to walk into Puff. He's going to walk into Puff, and he wants the 1v1. Spell shield for Puff, saved by PYL, and Kramer survives.
And with the sustain and the Ocean, this is actually just going to be Baron.
Oh my goodness, they've actually done it. The Realm Warp to get in there. PYL is trying to zone away Chalitza. Puff healing up. He's already back up to full, but here comes Ice. Baron down at 3,000 health. Chalitza can't get in. LGD, get the Baron.
Kramer, can you possibly carry any harder?
Oh my goodness.
This man deserves a raise, a massive raise. You can see him right there on the cam, breathing out a giant sigh of relief. I'm not sure if that was a sigh of relief or a sigh.
Exasperation, yes. But let's watch that again from the beginning.
Yeah, I have to say, this is a position that LGD should not have put themselves in. There was no flank coming in from Vici, but Southwood gets a 4-man taunt anyway. It was a little bit too easy on that end, and you can see with the instant CC followed up by the Kennen, the disengaged tools didn't have time to really show up for LGD. No Realm Warp to keep them out of that position. Chains of Corruption already a bit too late on the engage, so it was very questionable engage by a very questionable position for LGD to put themselves in. I was actually very surprised that Vici was able to get such a picture-perfect path into the back line.
Yeah, Ikes, I mean, finding the Dragon's Rage to get the knock-up onto Kramer and the immediate follow-up taunt from Southwind to lock him down. Quick reactions from Vici to find an opening as LGD, like we said, they find themselves out of position, they get punished. For the second time this game, though, it is Kramer and Ian who managed to hold the ground for the squad and cover up these mistakes. They're holding up the bandages, they've got the gauze, they've got the med kit open to try and stop the bleeding. Will it be enough as we are, once again, dead even in gold, Baron on LGD for 2 minutes?
I cannot imagine the amount of tilt Kramer would feel if they don't actually win this game.
Oh boy, that would be the series right there.
Just think about how much this man has carried. Herald team fight, he finds Jay with the Chains of Corruption, makes it an instant win, and then his team gets basically wiped in the mid lane. He plays a 1v3 game.
And we do have to celebrate his opponent as well. Puff on the other side is 6-0-3. Full build to try and match that. This really is a game of 80 carry versus 80 carry. The rest of the team is mostly accessory at this point as LGD are just continuing to push forward.
Do we call this a 2v8? Is this technically a 2v8 where the...
Which 80 carry can hold their team in check the longest? As bottom inhibitor turret goes down, mid-tier 2 goes down, and still lies, pushing up against that top inhibitor turret. Kramer getting some good poke out, but it's not quite enough, and lies, breaks it down. Slowly but surely, Vici are giving up ground, and this is what you were talking about in the early game. Once LGD hit that late game, their team fight, their mobility is so powerful.
Yeah, LGD, they just have the upper hand when it comes to the 1-3-1 composition. Neither of these side lanes can really stand up from Vici's end, but PYL could be LGD putting his team in a very bad position.
Oh, no!
There's a ward there.
Oh, no! Uh-oh, there's the Sonic Wave. PYL, don't you carry him to Kramer. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. They're going over the wall. Chains of Corruption onto Southwind. It's going to spread out just a little bit, but not quite enough. Ian's looking for entry, but cannot find it. Meanwhile, Lies onto the inhibitor. He's broken it down. Chalitza with Exhausting Ghost cannot teleport in. He's trying to defend, but it looks like Lies is working on the Nexus turret. With Elder Dragon there, LGD can continue to push and pull. There we go. That's the Slicing Maelstrom. Kandi's trying to bait out this Elder Dragon, but Vici need to choose teleport onto the Nexus. They're going to try and end the game. It goes down. Kramer is single-handedly doing everything for this team. He's turning onto it. He's taunted. He goes down. LGD lose 2, but the Elder Dragon is still up. PYL and Kandi are going to take that away, but will they be able to defend long enough? Because Vici, they're pinging onto the inhibitor. They're pinging onto the Nexus.
This is a very slow take from LGD. Look at how slow they're taking
teleport.
it.
They're backdooring. They're actually going to go for it. Puff. It's 80 carry versus 80 carry Clement. Who's got it? Who's got the damage? Is it going to be the Sivir? They're still finishing the Elder. Finally it gets picked off, but Ian makes his way back, and the inhibitor respawns. Teleports to lock Puff down. 6-0 and 3 is about to come to an end at the hands of LGD. Ian standing over the corpse. There's the quick burst. No, he misses it. Forced to flash, and finally the shutdown gold.
So as crazy as that LGD play was, I actually think it was the correct play. It definitely was the correct play, because even if they didn't finish the game right then and there, you're talking about
it's bare Nexus.
Yes, it's look at that Elder Drake buff. That's a massive Elder Drake. There's 5 Elder Dragon. There's 5 Drakes for them to buff up their true damage.
Yep.
And I don't see how Vici Gaming can possibly come back from the next 5v5 team fight. It was crazy, but there was a reason behind the madness.
Ooh. Oh man, what a gamble from this. You can see the replay on the side of the screen. Slicing Maelstrom to try to clear out the wave, and then Kramer doubles down. All the cards on the table. Vici call, they make the bluff. They save the Nexus. Vici call with an all-in of their own, and LGD turn it back around. It's a double bluff, Clement. Who is telling the truth?
You know, the worst case scenario that could have happened right there was if Puff actually went towards the Elder Dragon and killed both members there. Because at that point, with 6-0 and 4 against only a Skarner and a Tahm Kench, he could have killed both members. And that probably would have been the worst scenario for LGD, but they actually calculated their defense very well. Ian still was able to go back to base, 1v1, no problem. Doesn't matter how fed the Sivir is, he should be able to handle that. So there were no real threat of losing the game right then and there. And they also had the Elder Dragon to back it up. So as crazy as that was, I actually think LGD played it well. Played it decently.
Yeah. Finally, some craziness pays off for LGD, but 39 minutes into game 1 of this set, they instead decide not to focus down inhibitors or the inhibitor turrets or even the Nexus. They turn instead towards the Baron, still playing it patient, playing that 1-3-1 to keep Vici split apart and force them to make bad decisions. The trade-off is that Elder buff is falling off in 15 seconds. So it's just going to be a straight up 74,000 gold to 76,000 gold. Who's got the team fight?
I honestly think LGD should go for another fork. They're going to have full map control with how strong they are. And look at Chalitza. He can't leave his base at this point. If there is a ward somewhere behind this, Kramer could pull the same tricks. They have Abyssal Voyage and Realm Warp to do the same things.
Teleports back up for Lies, too.
Yeah, so LGD, all they need to do is actually just play the 1-3-1 game, make sure they draw Vici Gaming out of their own base, and they could instantly finish the game.
And look at Chalitza. He knows it. You were just talking about the Abyssal Voyage, Realm Warp teleport. He is hugging that Nexus, sacrificing minion waves and lane pressure to prevent the back door. He is a walking sentry right now, getting 0 gold, but for his passive income, just so he can land the stun with Slicing Maelstrom if LGD do backdoor. Because all it takes is a single ultimate from PYL or Lies to get back there.
Some way, somehow, I feel like Vici are still going to come out of this.
I know, right?
It's a weird feeling, but you feel like Vici can actually come out of this.
Yeah.
The best they can hope for is a full team wipe of LGD. That's how they're going to win the game, but it's very hard to do.
That's an early exhaust as Jay gets chunked down to half. Bottom inhibitor broken down by Lies. Middle inhibitor about to go down too. LGD, they're not taking any chances. Still Chalitza is hugging the Nexus as minions are starting to flood in. 2 minutes on Baron. Triple inhibitor down, and that's the save. Ike's goes in. Kramer gets knocked up and eaten out, but the knockup onto the bottom side of the fight lies, eating some damage. He goes down low. Will get popped as he goes golden dive in for me, and as he's looking for one, Kramer finds himself a kill onto Ike's. 1-for-1 Puff is on the fountain, but Kramer finishes off the Nexus. Finally, the carry pays off, and the 6-game streak is done. LGD find their Game 1 win.
It was a great flash at the end from PYL to make sure Kramer did not fall back into the composition of Vici Gaming. Such an entertaining Game 1 we've seen between these two teams. Topsy-turvy at times, definitely unpredictable, lots of crazy moves. But LGD, finally, they show some of that experience on this roster. We're talking about currently in the LPL. This is the roster with the most seasons between all of its players, and it finally shows in this crazy game.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, you can see that gold graph swinging top to bottom to top again. Look at the damage, 25,800, 26,500. Just about even between those 80 carries too. This was a close game either way. Even though LGD had solid map control, they could not get over the LGD factor. The sword of LG Damocles hanging over their head. It did wound them a few times, but ultimately, it's Kramer who closes the game out for LGD.
Yeah, casting LGD games is frustrating because they never really win the way you think they will.
Yeah.
You look at the draft, and I think this draft was so well done from UDJ. They nailed down what Vici Gaming want to do. Vici Gaming, they are an early tempo type of team, and you can shut them down with just getting all the better laning matchups and turning that into the 1-3-1 composition. It looked like it was working very well, and mid-game happens and LGD win because of nothing.
We're still not quite sure why LGD were on that red side jungle, but they were, and they allowed the game to get even again. But I want to come back to something that you said a little bit towards the end of the game. LGD made the choices, they made the plays, and it ended up paying off. They felt confident that they couldn't have lost the game when they did the Elder Dragon for, I guess, Nexus.
That was super smart. That was really smart because, number one, the enemy team didn't actually have enough teleports to really compete with that, and they also had full minion waves pushing into the enemy base. So even with the 46-second death timer on Kramer, you could see that actually Vici couldn't push to finish. They also had the inhibitor timed that was going to come up right in that play as well. So that, okay, of course, I don't know if they actually lined all those things together. I'm not sure.
Tracking the timers.
But if it was the case, it was pretty smart. It was pretty smart if they actually did time those things
And
together.
even if it wasn't, it still ended up working out for them. That said, that's game number 1 for LGD. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. The LPL will be right back.